So we know that leadership development takes place when we disrupt patterns that aren't working and replace them with more effective ones. So while self-awareness is the key to change, it's not enough on its own. Change requires skillful action too. So let's look specifically now at the core thinking pattern associated with each style and how you can move from struggling to striving thinking. So the core perfectionistic thinking pattern is really about believing that they're less than perfect and that less than perfect results means I'm not good enough. And the idea here is to develop some thought-stopping techniques first. So whenever you find yourself mentally scolding yourself or others for not being good enough, you can put the handbrake on there and really pull that up. And you can replace that thinking with the achievement style, which is all about, I'm going to do my very best. And I'm accepting of myself and others. It's understanding that we all have strengths and weaknesses. And this is what we call emotional intelligence in action, where you can pull up that critical self-talk and that critical thinking and replace it with something that supports you, thinking that supports you rather than sabotages you. So now let's have a look at the core language patterns and how you can move from struggling to striving language. So the core language of a perfectionist is all about mistakes and this anxiety around mistakes. So it might be language like, oh, what if I make a mistake? Or what if I fail? Or I'll be devastated if I fail. And there's a lot of black and white thinking and language and a lot of catastrophizing language in a perfectionistic style. So it's all about devastation and a disaster and all that sort of thing. And there are a lot of shoulds and must. I should have done this. I must do that. So there's this real sort of force around it. So being tuned in enough to know when you're using language like that, and then replacing that language with something like this, being able to say, well, mistakes will occur from time to time, and it's important to learn from them. It's not the end of the world. And the achieving style uses language around what worked, what didn't, and what's next. So they'll be asking themselves that, but they'll also ask questions of others. So they might look at a situation where there's a mistake made and look at, okay, let's have a look at the whole situation. What worked well? What didn't? Where were the mistakes? What happened there? And what would we do differently next time? So it's very much a forward movement approach in the achieving style, where the perfectionistic style gets very stuck on problems and just goes round and round in the problems, and then the anxiety increases. So let's have a look now at some of the core behaviour patterns and how you can move from struggling to striving behaviours. And I'll put both sides up here so we can go through each one of these. So the perfectionistic style in their behaviour, well, they'll attack other people's ideas and they'll also tend to highlight and focus on flaws. Whereas the achieving style, they don't judge others, they don't criticise them either. They provide honest feedback skillfully and sensitively, and they encourage others through a coaching approach. The perfectionistic style tends to have repetitive, rigid, and even ritualistic behavior, which we'll see showing up where they, check and double check work. And one of the things that I found in my behavior was that I would, if I was researching something, I'd need to have every book or every article on the topic. And it wasn't until I learned about, wow, that's perfectionistic, that I was able to pull that back a little bit. So being able to see what sort of behaviors show up for you that are a bit repetitive, a bit rigid, or a bit ritualistic, and replacing it with the achieving style, which is a bit more flexible and able to adjust and adapt when required. So it's that sense of being able to let go a little bit or adapt your style to the situation. The perfectionistic style sets goals, as we've said before, that are often difficult to achieve. So noticing when you're setting goals that really, you might have a work plan, or I know some of you use the balanced scorecard and that sort of thing, and you've just got so much in it. It's not it's almost impossible to achieve. So it's about being able to look at that more realistically and use the achievement style, where you're setting goals that are realistic, you're planning out the actions needed for each milestone and knowing that that's realistic, and you'll also reassess when necessary, because sometimes things will fly in left field at work. That happens all the time. Unpredictable things will come in, and know that you might have to reassess your goals and your work plan. The perfectionistic style takes little pleasure in success. Now, this is one of the things that I see very commonly in my coaching work. I can often be coaching someone who's had enormous success, but there's very little pleasure in the success. And I call this the ever seeking, never finding aspect of perfectionism. It's like they've achieved something and they're straight on to the next thing without actually even enjoying the win or enjoying the pleasure and even accepting acknowledgement from others. It's almost like they pass that off. Whereas the achievement style enjoys success and achievement with a healthy self-pride, and they celebrate success. They know how to stop and say, wow, that was great, and get their team together, or even they can acknowledge their own success. And they can do this acknowledging for themselves and others in an authentic way. And sometimes that's part of the shift that's hard for leaders, that sense of being able to say, I did really well on that, and being able to do that with authenticity and knowing that that's honest, and that there's a healthiness about that. Leaders do need to know what they're good at and what's gone well, and be able to acknowledge that for themselves and for others. The perfectionistic style will avoid trying new things or unknown things. They'll shy away from those sorts of things. Whereas the achieving style will give things a go, and they'll take considered risks, and they'll even try things when there's no guarantee of success. So it's that sort of courage that's inherent in that achievement style. Whereas with the perfectionistic style, we see quite a lot of fear. So hopefully you can see the difference there now that we've drilled into those in a bit more detail. You can see the patterning that goes with the thinking, the patterning that goes with the language, and the patterning that goes with the behavior. And if you adjust even small aspects of that, you will start to get a different result. And the good thing is that you'll start to get energy back because of that energy drain that happens in that perfectionistic style.